In the morning session, we have covered first come first serve scheduling algorithm. It is a non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. So what is non-preemptive? Once the CPU is allocated to process, once the CPU is allocated to process, so automatically the CPU will be available till the completion of a process. That means if the CPU is allocated to, if the CPU is allocated to P1, the P1 process will never release the resource. The P1 process will never release the resource CPU until it completes its execution. Until it complete its execution. Okay. Then what about preemptive algorithm, right? So under the SJF, we have two varieties. One is a preemptive and the second one is, there is a problem with the right pad, I think so. Right? Non-preemptive. Okay. So when it will be considered as a preemptive, when it will be considered as a non-preemptive. So first of all, in the case of SGF, shortest job first, the process which has the lowest burst time will be given the CPU. Okay. In the case of FCFS, the process which came into the ready queue first will get the CPU first. In the case of SJF, among the processes which are waiting in the ready queue, the process which has the lowest burst time will get the CPU first. Okay. If you talk about non-preemptive, so what we need to consider, the problem consists of only two columns. One is a process and the second one is burst time. Burst time means, for example, 4, 3, 2. So among these, so automatically P3 will get the CPU first. After completing the P3, then only the CPU will move to preempted to P2. Why? Because P2 is the next shortest. After that, once we complete the P2, then only we switch the CPU to P1. Likewise, after completion of the P3 process only, we are preempted the CPU to P2. After completion of P2 only, we are switched the CPU to P1. Okay. So until and unless the process is not completed execution, the CPU will be never switched to some other process. That is called as non-preemptive. Then what is a preemptive? In the case of preemptive, we need to consider burst time as well as arrival time. Okay. What is burst time? For example, same 4, 2, 3 might be the burst times. 0, 1, 2. So actually among these three process, P2 is the shortest job. Among these three process, P2 is the shortest job. But we are assigning the CPU to P1 first. Why? Because at the 0th second, P2 is not enter into the system. P2 is not enter into the system at the 0th millisecond. At the 0th millisecond, only the available process is P1 in the ready queue. So automatically CPU is allocated to P1. Okay. Once the CPU is allocated to P1, after 1 millisecond, P2 came into the ready queue. So at that time, so P1 completed its 1 millisecond execution. Still P1 requires 3 milliseconds of CPU time. But when compared 2 with 3, automatically P2 is the shortest process, shortest burst time process. So automatically CPU will be preempted from P1 to P2. Why? Because P1 requires 3 milliseconds, whereas P2 requires only 2 milliseconds of CPU time. That is the reason why even without completing the P1, CPU will be switched from P1 to P2. That is called as preemption. Okay. So the problems under FCFS and SCF are covered in the last class. Now I would like to go for the next variety. The next one is a priority. Priority. So what is a priority algorithm? Right? Under the priority also we have P1, P2, P3. Three processes are available, and what we have, burst time. Burst time is also we need to consider. This is a process and this is the burst time, and the next one is the priority. Right? So 4, 3, 5. So these are the burst times, and next priority. So what is the priority? 1, 3, 2. Okay. The process which has a less number is having a high priority, for example. Okay. So automatically which process will get the CPU first? P1 process will get the CPU first, and then P3 process will get the CPU. At the last, P2 will get the CPU. Okay, why? Because as it is the highest priority, P1 is highest priority, so that we assign the CPU to P1 first. After completing the execution of a P1 process, and then CPU will be switched to preempted to P3. After executing a P3, EP will be switched to P2. Okay, let me draw the Gantt chart. So initially among these things, that means in the priority algorithm, highest priority process will get the CPU first. Okay. So now according to this particular line, which one having highest priority? P1 is having the highest priority. So initially I will assign CPU to P1. How much time it requires? It requires 4 milliseconds of time. So 0 to 4. Okay. After completing the P1 only, the CPU is preempted to or switched to some other process. Okay. In among P2 and P3, between P2 and P3, which one is the next highest priority? Which one is having next highest priority? So P2 is the next highest priority process. So I will give a chance to P2 then. Sorry, P3 then. So what is the time required to complete P3? 5 milliseconds. So 4 to 5. So total 9. So at the end, I will give a chance to P2 process. So how much time it requires? It requires 3. 3 milliseconds to complete. Okay. That means we are not switching from one process to another process at the middle. We are not switching from one process to another process at middle. After completing one process only, we are switching to some other process. That is the reason why priority is a non-preemptive. Priority comes under non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. Okay. So now calculate the waiting time of each process. What is the waiting time? What is the waiting time of P1? The waiting time of P1 is, what is the waiting time of P1? 0. And next, what is the waiting time of P2? The waiting
9.
time of P2 is 9. What is the waiting time of P3?
4.
4. So how many number of processes are there? 3 processes. 0 plus waiting time of P1 and waiting time of P2 and waiting time of
9 plus 4.
P3. So 13 by
3.
so totally
4.3.
0.3 milliseconds. Okay. So that is about priority algorithm. The process which is having a highest priority will get the CPU first. Okay. Can I move to the next priority algorithm? Sorry, next scheduling
ma'am.
algorithm.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And the next one is a round robin algorithm. So in round robin algorithm, we have a value called as time quantum. Okay. So here we need to mention the CPU time quantum. For example, 3 milliseconds is a time quantum. So once we allocate a CPU to one process, the CPU will be executing that process only for 3 milliseconds. If the process completes the execution, no problem. The CPU will be switched to some other process. For example, even if the process not completes the execution within the 3 milliseconds of time, even though we are switching the CPU from that particular process to next process. Again, for that process also, we are giving only 3 milliseconds of CPU time. Likewise, each and every process in a ready queue will get only 3 milliseconds of CPU time in the first round. Again, we are starting from the first process. Again, we would like to give 3 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds to each and every process in a ready queue. Okay. Likewise, whether the process completes the execution or not, the CPU is switched from that particular process to another process after 3 milliseconds. That means after the time quantum. Here in our example, we are assigning 3 milliseconds of time quantum. Okay. So that is the reason why after 3 milliseconds, whether the process completes the execution or not, we need to switch that from that process to another process. Okay. So let me explain you with an example. So this is a process. Under we have a three process, P1, P2, P3, and then burst times. Okay. For example, it requires 6 milliseconds of time, and it requires 8 milliseconds, and it requires 9 milliseconds, for example. Okay. And then what is the time quantum? The time quantum is 3 milliseconds. Okay. Let me draw the Gantt chart. Okay. Right. So initially we need to start from the first process like FCFS. Like FCFS, we need to give a chance to the first process. Right? Assume that P1 comes into the ready queue first, and then P2, and then P3. Right? So according to the first come first serve, the process which enter into the main memory ready queue first will get the CPU first. In our assumption, P1 and P2, P3. P1 after P1, P2 came, and after P2, P3 came. Okay. Now, first initially we need to start with a P1. How much time we need to allocate to P1? We need to give only 3 milliseconds of time. So I have given 3 milliseconds of time for the P1. So how much time actually P1 requires? 6 milliseconds. So, but how much time we are allocated? The CPU time to P1, only 3 milliseconds of time we allocated to P1. Okay. Whether the P1 completes its task or not, we no need to worry about. Automatically CPU is switched from P1 to P2. Why? Because the time quantum is over. Again we are giving 3 milliseconds of time to P2. 3 milliseconds of time to P2. Okay. Actually P1, P2 requires 8 milliseconds of time. So, but we have given only 3 milliseconds of time. Even for P1 also, P1 requires 6 milliseconds of time. But we have given only 3 milliseconds of time. So, still it requires 3 milliseconds. Still requires 3 milliseconds. It is also 8 minus 3 means still it requires 5 milliseconds. Right? 5 milliseconds. And then whether P2 completes its execution within 3 milliseconds or not, we need to switch the CPU to P3. So how much we need to give? Again 3 milliseconds for P3. So actually P3 requires 9 milliseconds. So 9 minus 3 means still it requires 6 milliseconds. Okay. So what we have to do after completing all the process in the ready queue, again we need to move back to the first process. So again what we have to do? Again we need to give 3 milliseconds of time to the P1. 3 milliseconds of time to P1. So automatically 3 milliseconds of time means 12. Okay. So P1 completes its execution. Okay. So what we have to do? Again after P1, again we need to switch the 3 minus 3 means 0. Okay. After that again after 3 milliseconds we need to switch to P2 in the second round. Okay. Again we would like to give 3 milliseconds to P2. 3 milliseconds. So automatically 5 minus 3 means still it requires 2 milliseconds. Whether it completes the execution or not, we don't have any problem. What we have to do? We need to move to the next process. So next process requires 6 milliseconds. So 6 minus 3 means still it requires 3 milliseconds. Okay. Okay, what we have to do? Again we need
Hello, madam.
to the,
Hello.
tell me.
Hello, madam. Small doubt, madam.
Tell me.
మేడం ఒక ప్రాసెస్ కంప్లీట్ అవడానికి ఇప్పుడు సపోజ్ 3 seconds టైం పట్టింది మేడం. మనం అలాట్ చేసిందేమో 4 seconds అనుకోండి. ఆ 4 seconds టైం అంతా తీసుకుంటుందా మేడం? 3 seconds ఇటు అంటే మన ఇచ్చిన టైం కన్నా అది ముందుగానే అయిపోతుంది కదా?
లేదు లేదు, ఇప్పుడు అదే కదా. నెక్స్ట్ ఇప్పుడు P2 ప్రాసెస్ కి మనకి ఓన్లీ 2 milliseconds కదా. సో 2 milliseconds కానీ మనం 3 milliseconds ఇస్తున్నాం ఇప్పుడు నెక్స్ట్ రౌండ్ లో. ఇప్పుడు చూడండి P3 అయిపోయిన తర్వాత మళ్ళీ ఎక్కడికి మూవ్ అవుతున్నాం? మనం P1 కి మూవ్ అవుతున్నాం. సో P1 ఆల్రెడీ కంప్లీట్ అయిపోయింది. 0 milliseconds. ఆల్రెడీ P1 కి 6 milliseconds ఆల్రెడీ ఇక్కడ 3 milliseconds స్టార్టింగ్ లో ఇచ్చాం. అండ్ నెక్స్ట్ 3 milliseconds ఇక్కడ సెకండ్ రౌండ్ లో ఇచ్చాం. సో P1 completes the execution, right? So we don't give 3 milliseconds again to P1. Why? Because P1 completes the execution, right? So automatically P1, whenever P1 completes the execution, P1 will move out from the ready queue. It is not wait in the ready queue in the main memory, right?
Okay.
Once the process completes the execution, automatically it will be swapped out from the main memory by the operating system. Once the process completes its execution, the process will automatically kept out from the main memory. So the CPU will be free at that time. So automatically CPU will move to the next process without any wait. Okay. So coming to P2, now your doubt, it will be related to your doubt, right? So we have given 3 milliseconds of time, but how much time does this P2 require? Only 2 milliseconds of time. So automatically after 2 milliseconds of time, what happened? The CPU
P2
switched to
execute.
next process P3.
Okay,
Okay.
ma'am.
Actually, we have given 3 milliseconds, but P2 requires only 2 milliseconds in the third round. Okay. Once it is
Okay.
completed, automatically it is switched to the, it completes its execution so that it will be, the CPU will be switched to the some other process, that is in a round, the next process is P3. So we are giving, we will give 3 more to P3. Again, we would like to start from first process. P1 does not require any, and next P1 or P2 also completes execution, and P3 also completes execution. Why? Because in the third round also we have given 3 milliseconds for the P3. So 0. Okay. Likewise, in the round robin fashion, each and every process will get the CPU time quantum in order to execute time, in order to execute the process. Right? Now it is time for calculating the waiting time. Now tell me, what is the waiting time of P1?
6, madam.
What is the waiting time of P2? And then what is the waiting time of P3? Tell me. See, in order to understand this one, what we need to do? Same morning, what we have did for the SJF, the same procedure. You need to go to the last appearance of P1. When the P1 appears in the Gantt chart last here. So we need to take this value 9. In those 9 milliseconds, how much time will the P1 consumed? How much time? From 0 to 3 will be, this time slot will be was consumed by the P1 itself. So we need to minus it. So we'll get a 6. Then what is the waiting time of P2?
12 milliseconds, ma'am.
Right? So we need to take the last appearance of P1, 18. In those 18, so how many milliseconds will be actually was actually consumed by P2? So P2 here 3 milliseconds and here 3 milliseconds are consumed by P2 only. So we need to subtract these two slots from the 18. So 3 milliseconds and 3 milliseconds, total 6. So 18 minus 6 means 12 milliseconds, right? And then what about P3? Here is the P3 last appearance in the Gantt chart. So 20, in those 20, we need to remove this slot and this slot, right? We need to remove this slot and this slot. And next, if you observe here, in 20, it is only consuming only 2 milliseconds only, right? 20 minus, not all are 3 millisecond slots. Why? Because here P2 requires only 2 milliseconds, but we have given 3 milliseconds. Okay, after 2 milliseconds, automatically it will be preempted to the P3. And someone asked me the doubt now. Not all slots are 3 milliseconds. 20 minus 3 milliseconds and 3 milliseconds. 6. So 14. So what is the average waiting time? What is the average waiting time? 6 plus 12 plus 14 by 3. That means 32 by 3. 10.66 milliseconds. Okay. Do you understand? Can I move to the next topic? Someone please respond. Can I move to the next one?
Ma'am.
Or shall we do another problem?
Next topic, ma'am.
Next topic. Okay.
Ma'am, we'll do one more problem, ma'am.
Okay. Good. Okay. Now it is your choice. You can give me the values for P1 and P2, P3. Tell me the values.
4,
4,
6,
6,
2.
2. Next, what is the time quantum?
Three.
What is the time quantum?
3, ma'am.
3. Okay. So now would like to draw the Gantt chart. Right? So initially we need to follow the FCFS. We need to start from the first process, P1. So P1 requires actually 4 milliseconds, but the time quantum is only 3 milliseconds. So after 3 milliseconds, automatically we need to move the CPU from P1 to P2. Okay. So actually P1 requires 4 milliseconds of time, but the time quantum is only 3 milliseconds. Whether the P1 completes its execution or not. So what you have to do in the case of round robin, at the end of the time quantum, automatically the CPU has to switch from P1 to P2. Right? So again we need to give 3 milliseconds of time for the P2. So but actually P2 requires 6 milliseconds. Still it requires 3 milliseconds. So P2 not yet complete its execution. Still we need to switch the CPU from P2 to P3. Why? Because the time quantum is over. But here the P3 requires only 2 milliseconds, but the time quantum is 3 milliseconds. So how much time it requires? Only 2 milliseconds. So after 2 milliseconds, automatically we need to move to the next round. Okay. Again, we have to give the chance to P1. Actually, the time quantum is 3 milliseconds, but we have given 3 milliseconds, but a P1 requires only 1 millisecond. Why? Because the total time required by the P1 is 4 milliseconds. 3 already done. Only 1 millisecond time required by the P1. So after 1 millisecond, we need to switch the CPU from this process to the next process, P2. How much CPU time required by the P2? 3. Remaining time required by for P2 is 3. The time quantum is also 3. So that 12. So after that, after 3 milliseconds, again we need to move to the P3. So but P3 already completed in the first round itself, right? Again we need to move to P1, right? P1 also completed, and next P2 also completed. Done. Okay. Now it is the time to calculate the waiting time. Waiting time of P1. What is the waiting time of P1? Tell me, what is the waiting time of P1?
8 minus 3, 5, ma'am.
Right. So P1 appear in the Gantt chart here last 8, and next in those 8, 3 milliseconds are already consumed by P1 only. So 8 minus 3 means 5. And next, what about P2? What about P2?
9
So 9, and then in those 9, 3 milliseconds are consumed by P2. So 9 minus 3, 6. And what about P3? 6. And earlier it doesn't have any execution part. So that is the only place where the P3 appears. So 6. So 5 plus 6 plus 6. The waiting time of P1 and the waiting time of P2 and the waiting time of P3. Divided by total number of processes 3. So 17 by 3 means 5.6 milliseconds. Okay. Is it okay for you now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And next, what happened if the time quantum is more? What happened if the time quantum is very less? What happened if the time quantum is more, and what happened when the time quantum is less? Okay. If the time quantum is more, so automatically, for example, if you given 7, 8 or 10 time quantum, so automatically what happened? This is P1 and this is P2 and this is P3. For example, it requires 12 and it requires 3 and it requires 1. This is the burst time. For example, if we are giving the time quantum like 10, okay, so automatically what happened? Actually P2 and P3 are requires less CPU time to complete the execution. If you give a time quantum of 10, automatically what happened? P1 takes 10 minutes of 10 milliseconds of CPU time. After that, P2 takes again 10, right? But P3 completes the execution within 3 milliseconds. So the smallest process P3 has to wait for 13 milliseconds in order to get the CPU. In order to get the CPU, the P3 needs to wait for 13 milliseconds. So the smallest process is waiting for the CPU much time. Okay, so that is the reason why the time quantum should not be too high. Okay, what about if the time quantum is low? What about if the time quantum is low? For example, you are given the time quantum 1. If it is too low, automatically what happened? Initially P1 will get only 1 and then switch it to P2. It will get 1 and then switch it to P3 and then switch it to P1 again and then switch it to P2 again and then switch it to P1 again. Why? Because P3 requires 1. So in the first time it completes the execution. Again 1 and then P2 1. So like that fashion, CPU execution time is very less when compared to the CPU switching time. That means if the time quantum is very low, so CPU switching consumes all the time. CPU switching takes much time, more time, rather than execution. Right? So that is the reason why when you want to implement the round robin algorithm, what you have to do, the time quantum should not be high, the time quantum should not be low. It should not be high, it should not be low. The time quantum need to be medium. Okay, are you got my point? If the time quantum is high, automatically what will happen? All the remaining process waiting in the ready queue are need to wait for the CPU more time. If the time quantum is less, so automatically the CPU will switch to the next process, and immediately the CPU switch to the next process. Immediately the CPU need to be switched to the another process because of the low time quantum. So all the time CPU is busy with switching from one process to another process rather than executing the process. That is the reason why in the case of round robin, if you want to go for the round robin algorithm, so better to take a medium value for the time quantum. If it is too high, all the remaining processor waiting in the ready queue need to wait for the CPU much time. If it is too low, obviously, here if you observe it is too high. So automatically the P3 requires only 1 millisecond of time, but it has to wait much time to get the 1 millisecond CPU time. But in the second case, you are using a time quantum of 1. So automatically what happened? Every time the CPU is switching from one process to another process after 1 millisecond. So automatically the CPU is always busy with switching from one process to another process rather than executing the processes. That is the reason why the time quantum need to be medium. That is one point you need to understand. And the second point what you want to discuss is, I forgot the thing when you discuss about priority scheduling. That is a problem in priority. What is the problem in priority algorithm? Okay, what is first of all priority algorithm? What is priority algorithm? What is the principle?
Highest priority process will be given CPU first.
Okay, so whenever you are giving the highest priority process, whenever you are giving CPU to the highest priority process, so automatically all the lowest priority process will get the CPU next to the highest priority process. That means, for example, in the main memory we have, in the ready queue we have P1, P2 and then P3. Okay, the priorities are look like this. For example, 1, 3, 2. So these are the priorities. So automatically P2 will get the CPU first because this is having highest priority, and then P2. Okay. Suddenly after while executing the P2, suddenly another priority one more process will came into the picture. P4 is came into the ready queue with the highest priority. Okay. For example, now I would like to give a highest value to the highest priority. Highest value to the highest priority. In order to make you understand, in this particular example, highest number will be considered as highest priority. Okay. So in this particular, by observing this line, what will we, which process will get the CPU first? Which process will get the CPU first? Which process will get the CPU first? Highest number will be considered as the highest priority. Which process will get the CPU?
P3.
P3 will get the CPU first. After that, P1 will get the CPU. At the last, V2 will get the CPU. So once first we assign the CPU to P1. After completing this one, CPU switched from P3 to P1. So after that, what we need to do? The CPU switched from P2 to P1. But at that particular moment of time, so P4 with the highest priority number enter into the machine. So what we will do? Instead of switching from P1 to P2, we are switching the CPU from P1 to P4. After that, while executing the P4, suddenly one more process came into the system with the priority 6. So automatically what we will do, after executing the P4, we are switching from P4 to P6. Likewise, the lowest priority process will never get a chance. Lowest priority process will never get CPU. Okay, so the problem is called as starvation. Very important question with respect to GATE as well as other competitive examinations. Right? What is starvation? The lowest priority process will never get the CPU. Why? Because whenever we want to allocate CPU to the lowest priority process, immediately at that particular moment of time, there might be a chance of coming a high priority process into the main memory, ready queue. So automatically we need to allocate the CPU to the highest priority process instead of the lowest priority process. Likewise, whenever we want to give a chance to low priority process at that particular moment of time, there might be a chance of coming a high priority process into the ready queue. Likewise, the lowest priority process will never get the CPU. So that problem is called as starvation. Starvation. How can we avoid this problem? The solution for this. What is the solution for this? The solution for this problem is aging. Right? What is aging? So whenever the process enter into the ready queue, note it down the time. Okay? The lowest priority process will never get a chance of CPU, right? Then what happened? So after some time, time goes on, automatically the age of that particular process, waiting process will be the more. That means it is waiting for so long time for the CPU. So automatically what we will do, after some time, we increase the priority of a lowest priority process. So for example, here the P2 is waiting for other processes, right? So after some time, what we will do? So we'll increase the priority of the lowest priority process. Okay. Likewise, in the future, the lowest priority process will be converted like a highest priority process. Why? Because once it is waiting for the so long time to get the CPU, and it never get a chance of CPU because of the high priority process. So the problem is called as starvation. In order to avoid such a situation, so what you have to do? The solution is aging. Aging is nothing but all the waiting processes priority will be changed from time to time, okay, to the highest priority. So once they become highest priority process, then automatically that process will get a chance to assign the CPU. Okay, are you got my point? The lowest priority process will never get a CPU. That is the problem of starvation. Okay, we
హలో
talk
మేడం.
what tell me.
మేడం ఇప్పుడు మనం వాడే సిస్టమ్స్ లో ఏ టైప్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్గోరిథం వాడతాం మేడం?
మనం వాడే సిస్టమ్స్ లో
ఏ టైప్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్గోరిథం ఉంటుంది?
అంటే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఇప్పుడు మీరు మొబైల్ తీసుకున్నారు, ఇప్పుడు మొబైల్లో మీరు జూమ్ అప్లికేషన్ ఇప్పుడు రన్ చేస్తూ ఉన్నారు. ఓకే, ఆల్ ది అప్లికేషన్స్ ఆర్ కన్సిడర్డ్ యాజ్ all applications what we are using are having a lowest priority, and the system process are having the highest priority.
ఓకే మేడం.
Okay, So the next one is the remaining two algorithms. So it will take just 5 minutes of time. So on the next one is multi-level queue scheduling. So after the round robin, we need to go for multi-level queue scheduling. As the name indicates, multi-level queue scheduling. Multi-level queue scheduling means there are multiple queues. That means if up to now there is only one queue, that is called as a ready queue. From the ready queue, we are assigning CPU to only one process among the many process. For example, in the ready queue, you have three process. In those three process, only one process will get the CPU. Okay, up to now. But multi-level queue scheduling means the ready queue is partitioned into several separate queues. The ready queue is partitioned to several separate queues. Okay. The processes are divided into different categories and those processes are kept in the different queues. Okay. Each and every queue has its own scheduling. Okay. And next, one more point, there are two types of queues. One is a foreground queue and the second one is a background queue. So what is a foreground queue and what is a background queue? Actually, we have two types of processes in a machine: foreground process, background process. What is a foreground process? Foreground process means whatever the process requires the user interaction while execution, such type of process are called as foreground process, right? For example, word processor requires the user to type something, right? Spreadsheets means it requires user interaction, right? In order to enter something, right? All those processes are called as whatever may be the process. If the process requires a user interaction, so all those are called as foreground process, right? If the process doesn't require any user interaction, those processes are usually run in the background. So for example, let me give an example. Here, there is a date and time, right? If you observe the cursor I am moving from here to here, right? So date and time is already running in your machine, right? It doesn't require any user interaction automatically. So we need to know what is the time and what is the date today. That means it doesn't require any user interaction, that process. So those processes are running in the background. Okay. The process which doesn't require any interaction will usually run in the background. And the process which requires a user interaction will run in the foreground. So whenever you turn on your machine, automatically the clock will run in the background. We no need to start on clock. We no need to start on date. So automatically the date will be displayed and the time will be displayed. And it will be changed from time to time, right? That means clock is running behind. That is the reason why such type of process are called as a background process. So what is the reason? What is the reason of running a process in a background and foreground? The simple answer is, if you divide the process into foreground process and background process, automatically those two processes can run parallelly. Whenever the multiple process running parallelly, automatically we can run more number of process at the same time, so that the throughput will be the more, so that the system performance will be more. In order to speed up the computation, usually we run the process in the foreground and the background. So there is no interaction between the foreground process and the background process. They run parallelly, right? So coming to our topic, multiple queue scheduling. If you observe here, so multiple queues are there. This is one queue, and this is second queue, and this is third queue, and this is fourth queue, and this is the fifth queue. So how these queues, how the processes are executed, right? Obviously, if you observe here, so this is the highest priority queue. After the next highest priority, next highest priority, next highest priority, and this is the lowest priority. Okay, the highest priority queue will serve first. That means first we need to execute all the process in the system process. That is the first queue, right? We need to execute the first queue. This queue we need to execute. We need to execute this process first, and then we need to, once it is over, all the process available in this queue is over, then automatically we need to move to this queue. Once all the process are completes its execution, then we need to move to this queue. All the process available in this particular queue are over, then we move to this queue. All the process are completed here, then we move to this queue. Okay, that means student process will get the lowest priority. Okay, that means here we have we have multiple number of queues, multi-level. Why? Because the execution also happened level by level. This is one queue, some process are available here. As I told you, system process are having highest priority. So after that interactive process, after that interactive editing process, and then batch process, and then student process. Okay. Interactive process means what? As I told you, it requires some user interaction while they are under execution. Okay. Interactive editing means, for example, student and faculty are both willing to work on the same document. They both want to edit the document in order to make the formatting, right? So such a type of process are called as interactive editing. Interactive editing means both the student and usually faculty would like to work on a same project and same document. So such a type of process is called as interactive editing. And then batch process. Batch process means similar jobs are collected and formed like a batch. All the similar type of programs, commands form like a group, that is called as a batch. And then student process, right? So how the execution will be in a multi-level queue scheduling. So it is a first queue, and this is the second queue, third queue, fourth queue, and fifth queue. In the queue there are 5 processes. Once we complete the execution of these five processes only, we'll come to this level. So once we complete these 2 things, then we move to third level queue. Once we complete these 3 queues processes, then we move to run the process which are in the fourth queue. Once these 4 are over, then we move to the fifth process. Okay. Whenever you move to the fifth process, suddenly a high priority process came into the system process. What we need to do? There will be never a chance to run a student process. Automatically again we need to move back and complete the process which is available in the high priority queue, and then we need to switch back to this one. So likewise, here also there is a problem. The lowest priority, the lowest level queue process will never get a chance to execute immediately. They need to wait much long time. So this is the problem in multi-level queue scheduling. In order to avoid such a problem, so we need to go to the multi-level. What is multi-feedback level? Previous one is a multi-level queue scheduling, and this is multi-level feedback scheduling. So what we can do, what it is, it allows a process to move between the queues. That means the process which requires more CPU time will be in the low priority queue. The process which require less CPU time, those processes are keep in the high priority. So initially the execution will start from here. Okay, here if you observe, there are three queues. Okay, initially all the processor enter into this particular one. Okay, the time quantum here is 8. That means if we mention the time quantum means the first 2 queues follows round robin and the last queue follows FCFS, right? First initially the process enter into Q0. All the process completes its execution, then we will move to the next queue. All the process completes the execution, then we move to FCFS, third queue. Okay, but if we observe, there is a link from first to second and second queue to third queue. Okay, so why we are having a link like this? That means, for example, initially we need to run all the process available in the first queue. What is the time quantum? 8. For example, there is a process called P1 and P2. P1 requires 10 milliseconds of time, but the time quantum is 8 milliseconds. So what we need to do, if the process not able to complete its execution when we are running the process in a Q0, automatically the process will be shifted from this process, this queue to this queue. Okay. And next, maybe the process requires 24 milliseconds of time. So the process cannot complete its task here. So automatically it will move from Q0 to Q1. Here we are giving a time quantum of 16. So 18 plus 16 is 24. When it is there, automatically it completes execution. Maybe some process requires more time. That is, it requires 28 milliseconds of time. What happened? So initially the process will be fed to here. After 8 milliseconds, the process will be moved from this high priority to next low priority queue, next queue. Okay. So here the time quantum is 16. So 8 plus 16, 24. It not at all completes its execution. Why? Because it requires 28 milliseconds. That means still it requires 4 milliseconds of time. So those processes are moved from second queue to third queue. Likewise, we need to move the process from high priority to low priority. For example, low priority process will never get a chance to execute. All the time high priority process will came into the picture. So what we have to do in that case, we need to change the priority of a low priority process to high priority. Okay, that's it. Okay, here we have multiple number of queues, but what is the difference between the previous one and this one? What is the difference between this one and the previous one? Okay, here there is no feed forward and feed backward connections. Okay, so once the first queue process are over, then only we need to move to the second level. So once the second level queue is over, the first queue is over, then only we need to move to the third queue in order to execute the process available in the third queue. Okay, after 3 we need to go for 4, after 4 we need to go for the fifth queue. Okay, that means if these 4 queues are empty, then only we move to the fifth queue. Okay, it is not like the case in the multi feedback. So what you have to do, if the process is not able to complete the execution within the 8 milliseconds of time, automatically the highest priority process will be moved to the next lowest priority. That is, here the time quantum is 16. Still the process is not able to complete the execution. Then what happened? It will be moved to the third level queue. That means the process which require more CPU time will be in the low priority. The process which requires less CPU time, that means less than 8, will be keep here. The process requires more than 8 milliseconds of time. So automatically it requires more CPU time than 8 milliseconds. So it will be in the second queue. The process which requires more than 24 milliseconds of time will be moved to the last queue. Likewise, the CPU bound process. CPU bound process means the process which requires more CPU time will be in the low priority queue. The process which are IO bound. IO bound means they requires less less CPU time and more IO operations time. Usually those processors we keep in the highest priority. You can see this line. If a process uses too much of CPU time, it will be moved to the low priority queue. Okay. And next, IO bound and interactive process in the high priority queues. Okay. The process requires low priority, if the process requires more CPU time, it will be in the lower priority. If the process requires less CPU time, that means the process is IO bound, it will be kept in the high priority process. And the next thing, if a process that waits too long in a lower priority queue may be moved to the higher priority queue in order to avoid the problem called as starvation. Starvation means a low priority process will never get the CPU. In order to avoid that problem, what we will do? If a process waits too long to get a CPU, we'll change the low priority to high priority. We'll change the process from low priority to high priority. This is called as aging. Aging prevents starvation. Okay. So that's it for today. So with this, we have concluded the second unit. From the tomorrow onwards, we need to start the third unit. Okay. I will share you the material today till the second unit.